Between January and April 2026, Nigeria recorded over 1,400 deaths from armed conflict, banditry and terrorism, more than any 4-month period under any previous administration. Tinubu's response? One national broadcast. No emergency cabinet session, no joint military command restructuring. Meanwhile, in the United States, when a single domestic terror incident threatened public order in 2025, Trump activated the National Guard within 72 hours, invoked emergency powers, and held 3 press briefings in 1 week. Same year, 2 leaders, 2 completely different definitions of what governing means. Everyone is talking about Nigeria's security crisis, but nobody is asking the question that actually matters. Is Tinubu's response a failure of capacity, a failure of will, or something more deliberate than either? If your president knows how many Nigerians are dying every week, and the records show he does, then what exactly is he waiting for? Before we go any further, I need to say something directly to you. I am one person. I spend days, sometimes an entire week, digging through security reports, cross-referencing casualty figures, reading legislative records that most journalists in Nigeria will never touch. I do this because you deserve the full picture, not the version Aso Rock approves, not the one that protects careers, the real one. If this channel has ever given you something the evening news couldn't, the only thing I ask in return is this. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. It costs you nothing, but it tells me and it tells YouTube that this work matters. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you in the next 30 minutes will change how you see this government permanently. Nigeria's northwest and north-central zones recorded the highest civilian casualty rates in the country's history outside of formal civil war, verified through ACLED conflict data and National Emergency Management Agency field reports, both publicly available. Tinubu's security architecture as of May 2026, Operation Hadinkai in the northeast, Operation Safe Haven in the north-central, both inherited from Buhari with minimal restructuring. No new theater commanders, no revised rules of engagement publicly announced. The trigger, the Plateau State Massacre of February 2026, over 100 civilians killed in coordinated attacks across 3 local government areas. The presidency's formal response came 5 days later, a condemnation statement from a spokesperson, not from Tinubu directly. Historical thread, under Buhari, delayed presidential responses to mass killings became a documented pattern. The Lekki toll gate response in 2020 was the most internationally scrutinized. Tinubu's team criticized that silence. Now they are repeating it. Here is what most people missed. The United States spends roughly $900 billion per year on defense and security. Nigeria's entire 2026 defense budget is approximately 2.4 trillion naira, less than 0.8% of GDP, below the African Union's recommended 2% benchmark. But here is the number nobody is talking about, and it starts with where the rest of that money is actually going. Institutions involved: Office of the National Security Advisor, NSA, Ministry of Defense, Nigerian Army, Nigerian Air Force, Department of State Services, DSS, National Intelligence Agency, NIA, and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Section 217 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, gives the President sole authority to deploy the armed forces for internal security. This means every delayed response is a presidential decision, not a bureaucratic delay. The law removes plausible deniability. The legal ambiguity. The Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022 gives the Attorney General authority to designate groups as terrorist organizations, but this power has been selectively applied. Bandits in the Northwest have not been formally designated under this act, which legally limits the rules of engagement for military forces operating against them. Trump comparison, institutional contrast. The U.S. Insurrection Act gives the American president powers almost identical to Nigeria's Section 217. Trump used this framework aggressively in 2025. Tinubu has the same legal tool. The question is not ability, it is application. Precedent. Under Obasanjo, Odi in 2000 and Zakibiam in 2001 showed military force deployed within days of provocation. Controversially but decisively, the institutional machinery exists, the political will is the variable. Hold that thought, because in a few minutes, I will show you exactly who sits at the intersection of Nigeria's security contracts and Nigeria's political financing for 2027. And the answer is not who you think it is. Who benefits from prolonged insecurity? Private security firms, several with documented links to individuals in Tinubu's political orbit, have seen contract expansions in conflict zones since 2023. Humanitarian procurement from NEMA and state-level emergency agencies follows the same pattern. Who is being weakened? Northern governors, particularly those from the APC who staked their political capital on Tinubu's promise to fix security, are now facing constituent pressure with no federal cover. Abdullahi Ganduje, as APC national chairman, is caught between defending the presidency and managing northern anger. The 2027 calculus. A president who resolves the security crisis before 2027 primaries has a powerful re-election narrative. A president who allows it to fester but controls the military response as a political lever has a different kind of power, the ability to deploy visible action precisely when it serves the campaign. The timing of military operations in Nigeria has historically correlated with electoral cycles. Silent actors. The NSA, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, has not given a single public press briefing on the Northwest crisis in 2026. For the most senior security official in the country to be publicly silent during the deadliest period in recent history is a strategic choice, not an administrative one. Diaspora relevance. Nigerians in the UK, US, and Canada who send remittances home are sending money into states where local economies are being destroyed by insecurity. The CBN's own data shows remittance utilization rates dropping in conflict-affected states. Money is arriving but cannot be productively deployed. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, that comparing Nigeria to America is unfair, that the contexts are too different. But look at what happened in Colombia in 2002, when Alvaro Uribe came to power facing exactly this kind of multi-front insurgency with a fraction of America's resources. He restructured command, deployed mobile brigades to rural zones, and cut homicide rates by 44% in 4 years. The resources are not the issue. The same pattern, the same institutions, the same result, when there is will. This is not coincidence, this is a choice. Pause here for 1 second, and I mean this genuinely. I do not have a newsroom, I do not have a research team, I do not have a TV station with a legal department protecting me if I go too far. What I have is a laptop, a library of government documents, and the discipline to cross-reference every claim before I say it out loud. If what I have just broken down is giving you clarity you cannot find on channels, AIT, or Arise, please subscribe right now. I can see how many people watch these videos versus how many actually subscribe, and I'll be honest with you, that gap is in the thousands. Thousands of you are benefiting from this research every week and haven't hit that button. I'm not asking for money, I'm not asking for sponsorship, I'm asking you to subscribe. Because when you do, YouTube shows this channel to someone else who needs it. And right now, there are Nigerians in Plateau State, in Zamfara, in Benue, and in London and Houston and Toronto who need this information and don't know this channel exists yet. Subscribe. Be the reason they find it. The security procurement ecosystem connects directly to political financing. Budget tracking organizations have documented that emergency security contracts, which bypass normal procurement timelines under the Public Procurement Act, have been awarded to companies with no verifiable security operational history. The beneficiaries are not generals, they are political allies with access to the procurement chain. Economic impact. The World Bank's 2025 Nigeria Economic Update estimated that insecurity in the north costs Nigeria approximately $1 billion in agricultural output annually through displacement, farm abandonment, and supply chain disruption. This feeds directly into food inflation, which by Q1 2026 remained above 33%. The ordinary Nigerian impact. In Makudi, in Gusau, in Maiduguri, the question is not abstract. Farmers cannot plant, markets close by 3 p.m., children are not in school. The policy failure is felt at the household level, not the ministerial level. Federal character dimension. The security response gap between the Southwest, where Operation Amotekun provides additional state-level cover, and the Northwest and North Central, where no equivalent exists, is widening a governance inequality that has direct 2027 implications for regional voting blocs. Diaspora impact. For Nigerians in the UK and US considering return, the security picture is a primary deterrent. Investment in agriculture, real estate, and SMEs in northern states has measurably declined among diaspora investors since 2024, according to CBN Diaspora Investment Surveys. And this is where it gets international, because the way Nigeria manages this crisis in 2026 is being scored in real time by the institutions that control its access to foreign capital. Here is why that matters more than most Nigerians realize. The U.S. State Department's 2026 Nigeria Country Report on Human Rights flagged inadequate government response to non-state armed group violence as a primary concern, diplomatic language that in practice affects bilateral security cooperation and arms transfer approvals. IMF and World Bank. Both institutions have flagged insecurity as a structural barrier to Nigeria's economic reform program in their 2025 to 2026 Article 4 consultations. The Tinubu administration's economic reform narrative, which has genuine credibility in international financial circles, is being undermined by the security governance story running in parallel. ECOWAS dimension. Nigeria's traditional role as the security guarantor of West Africa is being questioned internally. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso's exits from ECOWAS were partly justified by those juntas by Nigeria's inability to manage its own internal security. Whether that argument is fair is secondary to the fact that it is being made and being heard. For Nigerians in the UK specifically, the British Home Office's Nigeria Country Guidance, which informs asylum and refugee decisions, now references widespread insecurity in northern and middle-belt Nigeria as a documented risk category. This has practical implications for Nigerians with pending immigration cases. This is not the first time a large democracy has faced this exact dilemma. In Brazil in 2019, Bolsonaro inherited a security crisis in Rio's favelas and the Amazon frontier. He responded with aggressive military deployment and international optics management simultaneously, controlling the narrative even when controlling the ground was harder. Nigeria's government has not managed either. And in Brazil, that failure of parallel management cost Bolsonaro the moderate vote he needed in 2022. Nigeria's 2027 is closer than most people are treating it. The strongest case for the administration is structural. Nigeria's security challenges are not analogous to America's. The US faces defined, localized threats. Nigeria faces overlapping multi-origin crises across 36 states simultaneously, with an underfunded military stretched across multiple theaters. A direct Tinubu-Trump comparison, the argument goes, is politically motivated, not analytically grounded. This argument collapses on 2 points. First, the comparison is not about resource parity, it is about presidential urgency and institutional activation. Second, the Colombian president 2002 to 2006 proves that resource constraints do not determine outcomes when command decisions are made decisively. Nigeria's security budget, while insufficient, is not the binding constraint. This is a Buhari problem Tinubu inherited. Partially true, but Tinubu has been in office since May 2023. 3 years of continuation is not inheritance, it is ownership. The military is making progress, it just isn't being reported. Operational security is legitimate, but when NAMA's own displacement figures show internally displaced persons in the Northwest increasing year on year through 2025 and 2026, the absence of public progress reports is not discretion, it is contradiction. This is a northern problem. The South is safer now. Operation Amotekun has improved Southwest metrics, but ongoing banditry spillover into Kwara and Kogi and ongoing IPOB-related tension in the Southeast make this a national question with uneven regional visibility. The question we opened with was, is Tinubu's response a failure of capacity, of will, or something more deliberate? The evidence, the procurement patterns, the selective deployment history, the electoral timing of visible military action points toward a calculated management of the crisis rather than a genuine attempt to end it. Whether you are in the North or the South, whether you voted for this government or opposed it, here is what every Nigerian needs to understand. A government that manages insecurity as a political asset is not a government that intends to resolve it before the votes are counted. You now have the full picture, but knowing what happened is only half of it. The more important question is, what happens between now and the 2027 election, and what signals should you be watching for? Expect a high-visibility military operation announcement between Q3 2026 and Q1 2027, timed to generate a Tinubu is fighting back narrative ahead of APC primaries. Watch for joint press briefings with service chiefs that have been absent throughout 2025-2026. The NSA's silence will break when it becomes electorally useful, likely around a high-profile capture or neutralization that can be branded as a presidential victory. The intelligence exists, the timing is the variable.
What the National Assembly's Defense Appropriations Committee? Any sudden budget reallocation toward northern security operations in the 2027 budget proposal is a political signal, not a security one. Insecurity continues to escalate through 2027. Election-related violence layers on top of existing conflict, and Nigeria enters its most dangerous electoral cycle since 2011 with a military whose loyalty and funding is tangled in political patronage. INEC's ability to conduct credible elections in conflict-affected states was already compromised in 2023. The risk in 2027 is higher. Northern voters, particularly in the Northwest and North Central, who bore the highest cost of Buhari's security failures and were promised change under Tinubu, are the swing bloc this analysis is watching. If their disillusionment translates into low turnout, third-party votes, or organized opposition, the political map changes entirely. Track your state government's security spending independently. Demand that your National Assembly representative account for defense appropriations. If you are in the diaspora, your voice in Nigerian civic spaces, social media, community organizations, family conversations carries weight because you are not subject to the same intimidation that silences voices at home. The evidence points in one direction. Tinubu's security response is not a governance failure in the traditional sense. It is a deliberate calibration. Security managed at a level that maintains political utility without triggering the kind of catastrophic breakdown that would make continued governance impossible. What we do not yet know: whether the opposition, Labour Party, PDP, or any emerging formation has the organizational capacity to convert northern insecurity grievances into a coherent electoral challenge by 2027. When that picture becomes clearer, we will return with a dedicated analysis. The 2027 Northern Bloc vote and the one political figure who is quietly building the infrastructure to capture it. That story has been buried. We are bringing it into the light. Critical debate. If you think I have missed something, if you have evidence that contradicts this analysis, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. The conversation is the point. Before you close this video, I want to say something personal. I do not know exactly how many hours went into this one. Reading security reports, cross-referencing procurement records, mapping the political financing threads that most people will never connect. Some of these videos take me 3, 4, sometimes 5 days of solid research before I record a single word, and I do every single part of it alone. I do it because I believe that Nigerians, whether you're in Lagos or London, Abuja or Atlanta, Kano or Calgary, deserve to understand exactly what is being done in your name and with your future. The only way I can keep doing this, the only way this channel stays independent, unsponsored and unapologetic is if you subscribe. Not for me, for the next Nigerian in Plateau State who is trying to understand why his family is not safe. For the next person in the UK who wants to know if it is safe to bring their children home. Hit subscribe. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Turn on notifications because what we're covering next has been buried for months and I am going to bring it into the light. I'll see you there.